you want to go to the next slide? So just on the agenda today, so this is us, just so we know, Jared Paxton.
I had some work done, guys.
Yeah, and then Dylan looks a little different. He's pictured it in the middle. Just kidding. No, so I'm Jared Paxton. I'm a senior technical success manager, and then we have Mason, who's also on our, on the same team as me. And then Chris Hawks, who I think we mentioned before, had a baby, so he was going to be here. Obviously, more important things to attend to. We did take his picture down for just to honor him.
We debated
it. Yeah, we kind of felt a little jaded, but so the agenda today is we wanted to go over the mighty web page, basically what happens when a web page loads, and then very basic, what is an audit? What do we call, like, how do we define an audit? Audit use cases, going through the audit reports straight from basically once you get into ObservePoint through the interface and how to interpret those reports. The different scenarios you can set up for audits, because there's different use cases, whether that's for privacy and compliance, validation, or overall kind of tag monitoring and tag validation. And then we'll talk about recurring audits, and then we'll do a guided workshop session at the end, where the goal is to have something built, or at least something in the works of being built audit wise, that you can kind of take home as, a little, what do they call those when you go to a birthday party and you get a
goodie bags.
Goodie bag, yeah.
They got a goodie. You all got another goodie bag. This is your virtual goodie bag.
Yeah.
And if you're Eric, you're probably the only one that may not have an account yet, but you can sign up for free.
Okay, no, we have a trust account. They ran a couple.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so we'll just work with that then.
Okay, again, we're gonna start basics. So what is a web page? What happens? What are we expecting to see fire? I want to hear from some of you. What do you guys care about when this is our homepage? Let's pretend this is your homepage. What do you personally care about to ensure that fires on this page? Or happens? Maybe a 200 status code.
Starting from priority order.
Whatever, yeah.
Consent.
Consent. So like, you want to make sure the consent banner is up. It's working, right? What else?
All of your dimensions, tags.
Yep. Tags fire. Analytics events fire.
I want to make sure we know where they came from. Like, are they, if I don't know they have that context of where this visitor's from, it's hard for me to help them convert later on.
So tell me, so that's something we see in web analytics.
Yeah.
It'd be neat to see how that looks on the ObservePoint side and if there's differences.
Yeah, we can talk about, really our role is to validate that the web analytics is properly capturing that. Right, so, but yes, it's good to have that confidence that like that data isn't lost somewhere in that experience.
Yeah.
Again, we're not talking about anything fancy. We haven't clicked on anything. We haven't navigated anywhere. We're just loading the page. These are several things we're expecting to see fire just on the page load. And that's what ObservePoint's going to do. I mean, we're going to visit all your pages and collect all this data for you, aggregate it, and put it in nice, really pretty reports. And so you can go in and set up alerts and get notified if certain standards are not met, like consent banner not popping up or not working, or analytics not firing, things like that. So here are some of the use cases that ObservePoint can cover. This is just a handful. There's so many more custom things that we can configure into an audit to have you get even more value and pull in additional data for things that you may care about. And then you can create standards around those as well.
We get this deck.
Yeah, we'll send this out to you guys. Yeah.
Mason is someone is recording it too. Jared is.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll get into kind of what an audit is first. And just to kind of reiterate what Mason said, and John Pastano, our CEO's vision is this platform, ideally, we don't want to define all the use cases. There might be use cases you guys have that we can still accomplish in the platform that we didn't know about. And so those are just some of the things that we can do, kind of that we have defined, that we've worked with customers in the past, but there's plenty of other things and custom things we can accomplish as well. So we're just going to get into what is an audit. So an audit essentially, hey Scott, come on in. This is Scott from Centene, so I work with him. And, yep. So we're just getting into what an audit is essentially, and we just talked about kind of what's supposed to happen when a web page loads. So how we define an audit is you basically will tell ObservePoint a URL to crawl from. So you can crawl from like a home page and say crawl 100, crawl 10,000, crawl 100,000 pages, and it'll go find links and crawl to as many links as it can find. Or you can give it an explicit list of URLs to say go scan these pages.
Which is what we recommend.
Yeah.
If you have a specific list, that's best practice.
That can be more kind of prescriptive in saying I have these 100 or 200 most traffic pages, or I know that these are the pages on my site and I really want to test these specific ones. Like Mason mentioned, an audit will then visit those pages and capture the data of tags, cookies, many other things when the page loads. So we're not interacting with anything generally in an audit, we're just capturing page load data, so analytics that fire on those page view events.
We can interact, but generally we don't.
Yeah, and an audit generally, there's some interaction you can do, but generally we kind of, it's loading pages, yeah.
There's some, I would say it's the advanced use case is combining audits with some on-page actions to do cool stuff.
Yeah.
For example, like anytime you see a video player for YouTube, we could play the video and we could wait there for 10 seconds and make sure certain events fire, or we could find out what cookies, if you're concerned about privacy, what cookies or other technologies fire. VPPA is something that came up in the privacy world, kind of resurfaced in the privacy world, where people care a lot about video privacy now. And so I work with one of the largest media companies in the world, and they are very privacy focused, and they have audits now that every time they see a video, they play the video. And they capture the data that they observe the data, and then they have alerts around the tags and cookies that fire as a result of that. So yeah, just an example of a more of a combination of audits and on-page actions, which is the type of interaction we can add. But generally, when you just create these, there's no on-page action. They're just scanning and gathering that page load data.
Yeah.
For that advanced work though, because for me, I will care about page load, but I'm also gonna care about your advanced scenarios you were just talking about.
Yeah.
What about like form fills, form abandonment, errors in the form, things like that?
Yeah.
We'll address those with journeys.
Those
primarily.
those generally are covered in our journeys, which will be after lunch. It's kind of a journeys foundation course. That's a lot more prescriptive of do these steps, but we'll go into those.
Well, let's say you had a standard form though on like 100 pages, like we could create automation to do that with an audit too.
Yeah.
So there's
There's
scenarios where
flexibility.
you'll use both.
An on-page action on an audit is probably the one I tried to set up this morning, where like if a word appears or
If a
phrase,
keyword or phrase, that's another great example of a use case for on-page action, yeah.
Yeah, where we can, I specifically had a customer who they had a name change of one of their kind of subsidiary companies, and they needed that to be changed everywhere, but they didn't know where it was on their website. So we did a specific audit to detect where those keywords were. And then they can go in and see all the pages that it's on, go in and fix them. So very actionable and different use cases. But let's get into kind of the interface here, so you guys can get some more concrete examples of an audit of what it looks like. So I'm in an account right now. This is just kind of a test account here. But when I go into the interface, you'll see this menu, and then you'll see, this will be the data sources screen where it holds your audits and your journeys. These are generally, they're put into folders and subfolder structure. So we'll go into one of these audits, and in fact, we created a few different ones, but we'll go into this audit right here called ObservePoint California opt-in. Now, we titled it this way because we're scanning ObservePoint from California in an opt-in scenario where when we see the consent banner, we're saying accept all cookies.
When you name these, I mean, if you're working with tons of different sites, tons of different types of audits, has ObservePoint worked with like developing a structure and naming them, just not to prevent getting lost in all of them?
It's across the board. I've been here
Yeah.
for 5 years now doing customer success, and I don't think there's a standard the company goes by. We recommend just making sure they're descriptive, making sure that the key parameters like consent state or location are defined if they're important. Generally, I don't see frequency displayed there, for example, because you can actually filter by frequency. You can filter by a number of options, and so that might be the one thing to consider is if it's something you can filter by, or that might be more appropriate as a label, because we can also add labels. We also have folder filters. So yeah, we can get into more specifics around like folder structure and like account organization. I think that's something we could touch on in the workshop. We could look at Centene's account, for example, and talk about what's good or not good about the structure of the account.
Right. And generally that kind of naming can be left up to the company, but if you were to say like a generalization, maybe this part of the name might be something that's kind of common, as having the domain, maybe the location, and maybe what type of thing you're testing, where it's an opt-in or opt-out, or just a general, another audit use case. So this is what you'll first go into when you click on an audit. Now I'm actually going to collapse this nav bar so we have a little more room to work with here. But in an audit interface, you see on this left-hand side, some reports. We have these audit overview reports, which can give you overview information about the number of pages scanned, broken pages. And they're divvied out by use case. So we have overview, we have analytics, which will give you more, unique analytics tags. Give you, tell you coverage about your primary tags.
This is a good beginner report. If you're trying to understand just generally what kind of metrics we're pulling in, and you don't want to go through every single report, you can kind of come here, focus on the things that you care about, the use cases you care about, get a good overview of what kind of metrics we're pulling in. If you're interested in one, you can click on it. It'll take you to the report where that metric's being put into.
For example, you could go find the privacy and consent tags by clicking, if you go back to the one you're at, actually, Jared, if you look at that category, the really colorful bar there, you can click into privacy and consent, you can go find those tags. It'll drill into the report where that data is found. Or it should, I guess, maybe we, I think, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, if you click that, then it'll drill into it, so. Let's go back to this use cases. So we won't have time to go over all these reports, but I'll go over the general structure of generally what the reports look like. So these overviews are a little bit different in that they're kind of overview information that you can look at. This is the more general format that a report takes, where this is our pages report. We have Web Vitals in parentheses here because that's kind of a newer, solution we've released where it shows you your Web Vitals data. But you'll see the overview data up here where it's aggregated. You can filter by specific things. So we don't have any broken final pages here, but if we did, you'd be able to easily filter by just clicking on that and see all the broken pages. And then that's a very good question. So
Not a starting, but not one.
yeah, exactly. So sometimes when you click on a link and then it redirects. So a lot of the times the initial and final will be the same, especially if there's no redirects, but there's redirects, you'll click on something and it'll take you to a different one. So that's what that kind of goes through here on the
This
initial.
might be
final.
a unique case, but what about initial being one? Gets redirected a few times and then the final is still the same, but there was redirects in between.
That's actually the first example right there. If you look at that top URL, it's a service agreement with 2 redirects. Click into that, we show that chain. In this case, yeah, it redirects, actually it's HTTP, sorry, I missed that. So the first one is HTTP that redirects to HTTPS.
Sound slash.
And then it adds a slash to it too. So you'll find, we can filter on like number of redirects, and there's other things we can do to, create alerting around redirects. But we show the breakdown here, Jared, which I think is super helpful for our marketers, especially because they need to know what's happening to that query parameter, that campaign tracking code. That's really important to them. So
Yeah,
As you're looking at these different data points, you can create standards for any of this stuff, even number of redirects, if you wanted to get notified as soon as a certain threshold gets hit. So keep that in mind.
yeah, we'll get into that. We actually have a separate session on standards where you can proactively get alerted for things that go wrong, and that I highly recommend you attend that.
it'll be on the main stage on
It'll be
Friday.
in the main stage, yeah. So
What time? I think it's 10:15. I should, if we can record it, we'll get it to you if you can't be in.
Yeah, I have it.
It'll be me and Macy Bell, one of other CSMs leading that one.
So yeah, we see this overview information, we can filter, there's obviously other filters you can choose here, and then we have the pages listed down here. When you filter, it'll filter these pages. And you can easily export this by copying it or just export it generally here. There's other exports as well that you can go to. So that's kind of the general format most of our audit reports take, is this kind of overview information, aggregated information, where you can filter. You can also dive into things like trends, see trends for the last 6 months. We haven't ran this audit very many times, so there's not gonna be a lot of data here, but you can imagine if you have 3 months of data or 13 months of rolling data, you'd be able to see that trend over time, whether that's improving or getting worse. And even proactively add alerts to trend lines and say, hey, I wanna know when something changes by more than 20%,
Largest contentful paint and cumulative layout shift are 2 core web vitals, and then first contentful paint, time to first byte, are other web vitals. They're just not core. Those are a big deal for SEO, front-end web development, like excellent front-end web development and experiences for customers. So those are super important, and we had a lot of demand to put those in here, but
Yeah.
they impact a lot of different organizations.
Yeah, so this is just one report. There's although another really actionable,
Or
oh, did
you
someone have a
have-
question? Sorry.
Oh, I was just curious if you're planning on adding the accessibility report to the header.
We are, that's a very good point. So I forgot to go into this, but when you go into this general report format, you can click on a page and see page information, including like a screenshot, you can see links to this URL, you can see tags and cookies on that specific page, request log, console log, all these things. You can see tags and initiators and kind of look at where a tag originated from. And then accessibility is what you touched on, which right now is just available at this page details level, where you go into it and you can view the accessibility issues based on, you know, the filters you set here. On this page specifically, we release things a lot in this fashion where we release them at the page details level and then we aggregate them out to the audit level. So eventually, we're gonna have another section on this page that will have accessibility data over, you know.
Or possibly a whole dedicated report to it.
Yeah.
So there's,
Can you demonstrate, you're mentioning that for any of these metrics, you could create an alert off of those, right?
Yes.
And so like, that looks like, you know, change in 10% between time periods, can you designate if it's like hourly, daily, weekly, the percentage change between those time periods? Does that make sense?
yeah, the audit will run on a certain period of time. So you define how frequent the audit to run.
Okay, and it's then based off the audit.
Yeah.
The alert would be.
Audits today run daily at the most frequent, but we're actually changing that in a couple of weeks. We're gonna make it so you get audit every minute technically, but we'll have the logic that says, you know, like if it's still running, like wait till it finishes running and then a minute later run, right? But we technically could have almost like this always on scanning capability. Imagine an audit that just scans your homepage, for example, the most critical page on your site. You could have basically always on functionality and monitoring to make
Uptime
sure.
monitor.
Yeah, uptime monitoring, and you'd be surprised at how some of the largest companies in the world need that capability, and they don't have that yet today, and they can use ObservePoint for it.
We pay a third party to do uptime monitoring for us, so
Yeah.
you're telling me I can maybe do that with this tool?
You can get alert, you can get the text message from this tool, yeah. Yeah,
And we'll go into creating alerts in that session. Very quickly, you can see this bell icon on a lot of these metrics. And if you click this, you'll be able to customize an alert. And you can go in and see all the different metrics.
Can you do that again? I was looking down.
Oh yeah, you're good. So you just go into one of these overall
Okay.
information view and you see this bell icon. You can click that and it'll start to create an alert for you based on that data point. And you can customize that alert logic. And again, could be covered a little bit more in that Friday session. And if you aren't able to attend, we'll get you guys a recording.
The
You
good
can-
thing is it doesn't harass everybody. You choose who it harasses.
Exactly.
harassing is the term we like to use.
Yeah, exactly. That's a preferred term.
So I can totally prank him and like make it unreasonable.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys must work,
Bad
you
guy.
must work, you must work for a security company, if you're used to using that terminology.
I'll go really quickly though, because we want to get into like how to set up an audit. The other report that I wanted to point out is this alerts report. Now, this alerts report will tell you all the alerts you've assigned to this audit. And it'll have a nice really, you know, little status value here on those alerts. We can see things like, you know, our CMP banner is missing, if it's missing on any pages. In this case, it wasn't. You can see largest contentful paint greater than 2.5 seconds. It's like we had 425, you know, instances of that. Unapproved cookies based on, you know, what our consent management banner preference were. You can dive into those details. And in fact, I'll just show you an example of this. If I click right into this, it'll take us to our cookies privacy report. And it'll, based on the consent categories, the categories we've said, these cookies are okay to have in an opt-in state. It's saying, hey, we found some that are either unapproved or they need to be added to your implementation. So those types of things can be very actionable. And you can obviously get those alerts in your email or to Teams channels.
Do you dictate whether they're added into the implementation in ObservePoint, or is that defined within like OneTrust?
So if you have OneTrust, we can import straight from OneTrust, the groupings. Other CMPs, you might have to do some type of export of those cookies categories, and then we can import that from a CSV file to categorize
And
those.
so like every time you make a change, then just refresh your upload.
Yeah, with OneTrust, we've made it as simple as possible,
Yeah.
where you can just refresh and just say, and it'll resync, and if it added or removed, it'll resync those.
It'll be demoed a couple times on the main stage this week, you'll see.
Yeah.
We'll do it in their standard session and we'll do it, or I think Dave or our CTO is gonna present.
Yeah.
But it's a poll integration. we don't even call it integration because really we're just importing the data. We don't need any API keys. We don't need any authentication. We just go to the site and we grab the cookies from the site.
Yeah.
According to OneTrust, the OneTrust SDK that's available on the site.
And again, we can't cover all these reports. I would highly, in the workshop, we can go over them even more, but just to touch on one more, tag inventory report can tell you which tags we found on the pages. You can see the percentage of pages or number of pages those were found on versus tags that maybe were found on only, a small portion that maybe needs some cleanup. A use case for this is, hey, I want to make sure that Google Analytics 4 is on every single, that's a basic one, it's on every single page, it's loading. This is our primary tag. You can see that in our case, yes, it is. Of all the 1,000 pages we scanned, that's great, but you'd be able to filter very easily and see where that's not happening. Again, this can be automated, so you don't have to go into the report and do this. You can create a rule and alert, a standard to alert you of these things.
James gave the use case of at the credit union he represents that they need to do an inventory of all these technologies because they've contracted many agencies over. They've contracted an agency that they may or may not have around, and at some point in time they've added technologies, right? And this is the bigger the organization, you better believe the more marketing agencies you've had touch your website and leave stuff behind when they all pack up and go home. And you're left with the rest of your website, right? And you have no idea. I've talked to people this week that were saying, the project ended with that particular agency partner and they left. And literally 6 months later, the website is still sending consumer data to that agency that is absolutely owned by no one within the organization. So just going to this third party and who's doing who knows what with it. So that's a lot of people call this digital residue, yeah. And it's all these technologies that just kind of hang out there and that never get cleaned up because frankly, no one's compensated to go clean that up. Most people are not have that in their job description to go and tidy up the tech stack, which is what this is all about.
We could easily just go and say, look at the 2 pages this were found on. We can click into a page and say, how is this tag being initiated? I won't get into and actually find it because we actually have a lot of tags going on, but you'd be able to look and see and kind of nail down what's going on there.
Looks like it's firing through Vimeo actually, so it's a piggybacking tag.
Yeah, exactly.
So you could do it in this fashion where if you see something that's out of whack, you fix it and then run it again really quick to see if it's still there.
Yeah, exactly. That's, a lot of times, in fact, maybe broken pages, I had an example where we ran a site-wide audit for a customer. They went and they took it to the people who could fix these broken pages, came back, ran the audit, it was significantly dropped in, the number of broken pages and just be able to validate that very easily.
If it's on the bad list, just can't do meta tags, can't do Facebook, can't do TikTok, whatever. We've had a lot of people come to us with that. Work in healthcare, other companies, they just don't trust those social media vendors. They can create alerts to text them the day that we detect it, so we can catch things that are very explicitly on your bad list.
When you say text, I prefer email, but some things.
Email, Slack.
Emergency things that you just need to know at that moment. Are you talking
about uptime monitoring? Scott's or someone at Centene needs to know if your homepage is down. Sure. For example, there's one of the world's largest postal companies had their homepage go down, and the system that they put in place to monitor afterwards was actually an ObservePoint journey, because journeys today run every 15 minutes, and that's the most important journey in their whole bit in their account. Is just that one journey that gives them a pulse every 15 minutes. And there's obviously audits can do that capability too, but journeys today run a little more frequently, so that's why they chose journeys.
But you can just see kind of the number of things that we just defined that we wanted to check on in this alerts report, and we can dive into the details of those in the various reports. But I want to get into kind of a little bit how you set up an audit, and Mason will kind of show us that a little bit. We're kind of running out of time, so the workshop might be very short, so you guys can get lunch. But we knew we had a lot to cover here, so we'll try to keep going.
Luckily, audits, they're very easy to set up unless you're trying to do something very specific with on-page actions, which we won't go into today.
Do you want to go through maybe
you can in the workshop though?
Yeah.
Creating screens, just to,
yeah.
So he went to the edit screen right now, editing that code on it. But if we wanted to create one from scratch, this is what you do.
Okay, so there are 2 places you can go inside of the ObservePoint platform to create an audit. You can click on this plus button, create a new audit, journey, or folder, or you can click create new here, which gives you a couple more options. But creating an audit is also in here as well. So in order to get an audit off the ground, the only thing you really need is to give it a name and give it either a starting URL or give it a list of URLs we're going to scan. So we're going to give this audit a name. And then if we go to URL sources, we can then input a homepage like ObservePoint.com, or we can input all of our top traffic pages from our analytics platform. Now, of course, there are going to be a lot of other settings that you can configure to get more value out of the scan. We go to the testing scenario tab. This is more or less how we're going to scan these pages. And then this section is going to be what we're scanning. So ObservePoint.com, the frequency, we open up advanced URL constraints. We can add some more inclusions if we wanted to scan a specific section of ObservePoint.com using our crawler. And we can add exclusions as well if we don't want to scan pages like blog or career. We go to testing scenarios. Some of the different options we have are the speed of the audit, location, user agent, the width, so we can shrink this down to a mobile device size. We can block specific tags if you wanted to block your tag management system to see how many hard-coded tags or tags that are firing outside of that at scale. We have some privacy options, so we can enable GPC, we can reject all, accept all, we can block third-party cookies for some reason. And then we can subscribe to the audit as well. We can add custom webhooks, but that's a little more advanced. So there's a standards tab as well, so you can add your alerts that you've already built out, consent categories, rules, pre-audit actions if you wanted to run an authenticated scan, for example, have a sign in, then scan 100 pages, on-page actions for actions we would perform on every single page, like maybe some of the clicks we talked about.
Like
today.
keyword search was a good use case here where we're looking for a specific word across the pages. We could do that in on-page action.
So you do the pre-audit actions and then run the audit and then so you'd have a comparison.
Pre-audit actions are a one-time execution.
Yeah.
They happen before, it's basically to configure the browser, get it in a state before we go crawl. On-page actions are going to execute on every page or like targeted pages, because you can define the URL path. You can say, I only want this to apply to pages that have /videos or /p/ if it's a product page or something like that. So on-page actions happen at the end of the page loading, which they mentioned, some use cases, but like literally anything you can type in the dev console or any information you can access from the dev console, you can now report on and create alerts around with ObservePoint, which is super powerful.
So it's not just things that are visible.
It's not just stuff visible in the DOM. It's like literally anything you can access, and like you can grab any custom JavaScript objects. You can grab the user agent. You can, and again, anything in the dev console. So a data layer.
If you can use JavaScript to get at it, generally we can gather that data and then audit for you. So
Which opens the doors to almost any.
Train this then to look for specific component ID names then.
Yeah, component IDs, I assume that you're talking about HTML. But yeah, we'd use document like query selector all, we'd have a CSS selector for that component ID, and we would pull those in. And you can use it not just to create alerts, but also to create big inventories, right? Imagine you're a company that has forms on your website, but you have 300 forms and you have no idea which pages have those forms. You can use ObservePoint to go and discover and sniff out where are all those forms across your entire website and give you an export of that data.
When you said user agent, can you just give me an example of how you use that?
The user agent example isn't a great one. I've had some people want to expose it, but like just report on it. But I think the other examples are better, like HTML scraping, looking for components on the page, looking for required, maybe something required by a law to have on the page. Maybe it's a privacy policy link or some kind of privacy disclosure or a way to content. Maybe it's making sure that your support widget bubble is on the bottom right corner of every single page so that people can access your support team.
Yeah, so around like things coming into visibility, right? Can you track things like chatbots and like drift and how often it's fired, or if it's firing the correct playbook ID, things like that?
Yeah, so Drift will have, I think Drift has an SDK that is accessible by JavaScript. I think we used to use Drift actually. So yeah, there's more we could dive into on Drift specifically, but we absolutely can, if it's a visible element on the HTML on the page, then yes, absolutely we can.
Even after it's page load. So that's the main point, is like you will have stuff that pops up after page load. I'm wondering if you can see that.
Yep, you can tell ObservePoint, ObservePoint will wait till the network's silent, so after all the stuff is loaded, then we can investigate.
yeah, and we could even add some wait time if we needed to and things like that. So and those use cases definitely explore, especially with the Genius Bar, because we'd love to like even get some concrete, something to take away. We're actually not gonna have time for our workshop session to actually have you guys take away something now. But we want to make sure that you guys, have your question asked, which is great. We want to make sure that we're covering the questions that you guys have about this, so.
But yeah, go ahead, create an audit. It's very easy. Get it up and running, play with the results. Grab one of us if you wanna ask more questions, go down to the Genius Bar. We'd be happy to, or just pick our brains, so.
Yeah, do you guys have any other questions as we're, we still have a few more minutes. I want to make sure we answer, we kind of pivoted now, workshop to questions, but.
We
I
can
think
go
that'd be
back to
more
something
valuable.
basic that we may have already covered, but we didn't.
Can you
we weren't clear
show,
enough.
like, on it, the inventory of audits, like who owns the audit, who created it? Cause, I was able to log in,
Yeah.
looking at all the stuff in our, I don't recognize half of it. I don't know who made it, where it came from. So if I wanna clean that stuff up, who do I need to go contact?
So it'll be individually, it's available in this info icon, which you can find on every single card or row here and on this page. And then we're like weeks away from launching a new report that's account-wide reporting system that will have, you'll hear about it today in Dave's session, and it will tell you how you can pull in all this data and create a custom report, including the creator attribute that you're looking for. So that'll be really close. And we could get an export for you today, Scott, if you need.
Yeah, we can utilize our API for that kind of custom stuff right now,
But
it'll
that
be in
reporting,
the app.
but that
soon.
reporting is like weeks away, yeah.
Scott, I can chat with you about some of the actions.
Yeah, even Jared and I have done some cleanup recently of like, hey, we don't need to audit these pages anymore because, the website's been changed, so things like that.